Hi YouTube, Darth here. This is Over Your Shoulder, a series where I follow unsuspecting players and give what is usually unsolicited advice. Today's victim is community member ViolentMotion, a level 130 player with a very noteworthy focus on infantry. As I follow ViolentMotion today, I'll call out all the good stuff, the bad stuff, and things I might do differently. So let's look over ViolentMotion's shoulder. Alright, let's see what ViolentMotion is rocking here. Looks like with the AR-160, a reflex, laser sight, no barrel, and no attachment. This doesn't seem like a terrible setup for the AR-160. I seem to recall running something similar when I was running it. It's a good choice for this map in particular, simply because of the long-range engagements. I think the only change I might make is to add a stubby grip or possibly the angled grip as an underbarrel attachment. But otherwise, let's see how he does with this. And looks like we're making a beeline for Charlie. This is the first point that pretty much everybody on both teams likes to go to on this map, simply because there's a lot of action typically here, and it sort of controls the middle of the map. Right now, throwing down some health for Buddy, picking up the enemies that were missed. Looks like the minimap is still pretty active over there, so I'd probably just be peeking that little corner right there. Now, he put himself forward here, which I think might have been a little bit too overly aggressive, simply because enemies can simply shoot through that fence right there and take him out. But he does manage to come up with that guy that he did see on his map and his minimap, so good for him. Now, he's definitely making some violent motions here towards the bridge, despite the fact that there were 3 enemies on top of the bridge behind him. If it were me, I probably would have turned around and tried to take them out before proceeding forward. But nevertheless, he's sticking to cover pretty closely, so he's not doing too bad. And we can see that there are just a ton of enemies on that mini-map above, so you definitely want to pay that some special attention. Rather than going up these front stairs here, I usually like to go to the back and drop down the catwalk, but let's see what he does in this case. And it does look like he's going with the stair option. I think I would definitely peek those stairs rather than running up and forward. Comes up with that guy there. He's definitely seen and he gets taken out. Whenever you see that many enemies, it's easy to get excited, but you definitely want to take the time to try and play it safe. And ViolentMotion's back up, got a res from his buddy. Sees the one enemy there, got a spawn off, and got the other guy. And so the kill streak goes on. This really should point out the value of the minimap, because that guy was not necessarily visible, but he was visible on the minimap, so he was able to take him out. And right now it's looking pretty bad for the Chinese team. This is sort of an early break for the Americans as they are picking up the 4th point here at Echo. Somewhat in contention, possibly going to be defended. So here's the advantage and disadvantage of having height here. With the height, you have an advantage over your enemies in that they're exposed and you can see them more easily. However, you make yourself an easy silhouette to get taken out. ViolentMotion on a really good streak here. I think that the only thing I would have changed there is possibly trying to find a little bit more cover when trying to assault this point. But oh my, and it is Merry Christmas here. Ducking out of the way while he's reloading, he's off to farm a few more kills. Looks like he's managed to come up with the rest of the team there for a very nice, almost 1,200 point streak. I think he maybe only got about 2 of those, but at the same time, looking at the minimap is such an advantage and lets you find those kill streaks. We've done a really good job of cleaning up Echo, so let's take a look at the rest of the map. It looks like while the team was mostly focused on Echo, that the Chinese managed to take Alpha and Delta away from the American team. It looks like the Levolution event has taken Charlie out of the equation for the time being, but let's check it on the map and make sure what the situation is. Yep, it looks like Alpha is in contention, but the American team is there, and Delta is absolutely swarming with Chinese. So you got a little bit of a choice here. Do you go and defend A, or do you go to Delta and try to push on that? Looking at the tabletop again, it doesn't look like there's a whole lot of your friends coming to Delta along with you, so I'd probably just try to hold on to Charlie. And he's really exposed here to where waves of Chinese, and he just ends up getting into trouble. So he probably got a little bit of defending to do here at Charlie, depending on whether or not the Chinese team is making a push or not. He's making good use of tap firing here, but at the same time, I think his grip is a bit of a disservice to him. That ergo grip is really not doing him any favors. Instead, with the AR-160, I would probably be using the angle grip or possibly even the stubby grip just to get a little bit more advantage at range. I usually like to use the ergo grip at close range simply because I know I'll be strafing left and right a lot more, and strafing left and right is not something you want to do while aiming down sight at range. But tactically speaking, now we have the situation at Charlie where the US team can be squeezed from forces from Alpha and Delta, so you're going to have to worry about your backside and your front side. So you're going to have to make a decision about which point to assault, and he's going with Alpha in this case. And he missed that guy, and he's going to pay for it right here. ViolentMotion's back. It looks like the Chinese team is continuing their push. They are coming up currently with Bravo. Let's see what we got going on here. ViolentMotion's the only one that can do anything about this right now, and this is usually the situation I get myself into where I see the thing that's moving on the minimap and I have absolutely no backup. So let's see how ViolentMotion does, but I usually get taken out by the 3 amigos that are here because I can usually take 1, maybe 2, but probably not 3. Sees this enemy here and he's going for the shot. I think a little bit of an over-aim on that one. Again, I think his grip is giving him a big disservice here. And now his squad mate spawned on him, so he has a little bit of backup and he's feeling probably a little overconfident here. I don't think I would have come out the same direction again since I had fired without success. I knew that they would be waiting for me. Who manages to come up with that guy through the legs of the line, which is usually a risky gambit. They fixed the statue on CTE, but it's not live yet, so I'm usually a little bit skeptical. Great use of cover to take out the enemy. There's a guy behind him that takes out his squad mate, takes him out. That's the problem with spawns. You can never predict them, but you always got to be ready for them. So ViolentMotion getting some good work done there, but just doesn't manage to come up with the point simply because there's not enough teammate support there. Not really much you can do about that. So that's the thing about Battlefield. You can play well, but you're eventually going to be taking your licks, and it's really your team that's going to have to come up with a difference. If his squad mate had come up with that enemy, they'd be in control of Bravo now. And that right there is a fantastic example of paying attention to the small details on your screen. Let me show you that again. So check this out. We're coming up off of that hill. There's nothing on the minimap. We're looking around and we're looking for any enemies that we can see. We see a head briefly right there, a shadow on the ground. Take aim, take the shot. That is a fantastic catch. Bravo to you, ViolentMotion. Always use those small details to take advantage of your enemy, especially if they're behind soft cover like these pallet walls. Speaking of small details, we saw an enemy under the deck here, so I would probably try to work my way around the back. This is a great room for trying to capture Bravo on this point with. You get great view of the whole point, and usually you don't have enemies coming around behind you unless they see you on the minimap. So it's not bad if you have a tugs or something like that to help you out. You're getting a little bit paranoid here that exact thing might be happening. Whenever there's no friendlies on the minimap, assume that there could be hostiles. So oddly enough, his friends are not covering that point over there, so he's doing a good job of keeping his eyes on the enemies over there. And we finally see at least one teammate wake up to the fact that there are 2 enemies back there. It's a good shot lined up on this guy, and dice please. I'm going to have to assume that that's one of those times where, yep, he managed to hit the guy, we just didn't get the registration in the spectator mode. Interestingly, it looks like we have the M26. Getting a little bit of short-range action done here. It's got a few more rounds in it in case you're a little bit error-prone like myself. It's an interesting choice, and not one you see very commonly, as most people tend to run with the shorty if they want to run with the secondary shotgun. So the M26 has more rounds, but the great benefit that it provides is as a short-range weapon, it gives you that power in the short range that you need to complement a wonderful long-range weapon like the AR-160. So let's take a look at the situation here. It looks like A is still overrun with Chinese, and Delta, we've managed to push them off the map for the most part. So if we can take Alpha from them here, it might be game over Chinese. It's already 100 points behind for them, so it's not looking good at this point. ViolentMotion is doing a good job of stopping when he's aiming down sights to shoot. So ViolentMotion's in a great and terrible spot at the same time. You can get these kills in, which is wonderful, but at the same time, all the team of the enemy and the things and the guys and the stuff, they're all around him, and the dying and the hurting and the pain. But you get the idea. Double the risk, double the reward. You have to be very aware of your surroundings and always be moving. It's not a bad idea to have a silencer if you're going to be inside the enemy team like that. Now back with ViolentMotion, I think I might have switched it up from the AR-160 if I was going to be in this much close quarter combat. On Lumpy Garden, Alpha is really one of the few places you can use a close quarters weapon, and I'm kind of surprised that the enemies didn't see him sooner here. He really put himself forward, but at the same time, I think we're starting to lose respect for the enemy team. The US team has pushed the Chinese team off of Alpha, but they've come back up with Bravo. So this Chinese team's staying a little bit resilient here and continuing to push him back. But I don't think this Chinese team has really showed any strong resolve or ability to execute on any particular point. They've been pushed around the whole map. So here's another great example of using the minimap to find enemies that are unaware of you and take them out. He can see that these enemies on the minimap are headed straight for A and aren't paying him any heed, so they're pretty much easy targets. And now when disappeared, so you have to be on alert. If you don't hear a cry, you don't see a body, chances are that he's still alive and you have to go looking for him. You have to assume that an enemy like that is an active threat and is looking for you. And now I think this is one of those trouble spots where you could have an enemy behind you and you have a ton of enemies in front of you, so you have to decide. Because the moment you start shooting, you say, I am right here. And that's the problem with multiple enemies, they will start looking for you. And ViolentMotion right there used the hill to great effect to hide himself from his enemy while they didn't know exactly where he was in order to take aim and take the enemy out. But ultimately he took one shot too many. And right there you sort of saw the drawback to using the RDS, that sort of wide, fat scope that it has. Sometimes enemies just disappear into it. Leaving himself a little bit exposed here to the left. I'm kind of curious to see if an enemy comes up and gets him from that direction. being very aggressive with this gentleman, and managed just to shoot him right in the face with the shotgun. So right there is the power to the mask to the face, and being able to switch up that secondary weapon that you have and that primary weapon you have to sort of play off each other and be great in both situations. Same reason I use a G18 when I'm using a bolt action. He heard somebody back here and thought he saw him on the minimap, and I could have sworn that he would have been in there too, but apparently he was on the other side. By the way, #1 cardinal sin I find myself committing: chasing kills like this gets you out in the open and tends to get you killed more often than it gets you kills. But keep that in mind as something you can use, because every Battlefield player does it. Good intuition on trying to take these guys out. Probably going to come up with 2 or 3 kills here if he manages to come around and get them. Ooh, and ViolentMotion almost takes a hot pellet spray to the face. And the US team has cleared the Chinese out of Bravo. Next stop, whatever point they happen to have now. And it looks like Echo is Chinese team's current stronghold. Let's take a look at the map and see what we got going on. Yep, definitely a lot of presence here at Echo. So we can only see 2, 3, maybe 4 or 5 on the minimap, so you definitely want to play it a little bit slow coming in here. The definite wrong move would be to try to charge in here and take the whole enemy team. You'll just get gunned down. And ViolentMotion takes the right move here and peeks that single enemy, tries to take him out. Try to deal with your enemies one-on-one if you can. You don't want to try and take out the whole enemy team and think you're John Rambo. Now, the other situation you run into are these choke points, and I'm not a particular fan of just sitting at these choke points waiting for the enemies to engage you one-on-one, or possibly just taking your coin flips when you can get them. Frankly, you never know when that jerk with the FAMAS is going to get his 1 kill, and it's going to be you. So rather than do the stalemate like this, I usually like to try and find any other route I can get to the enemy team with. I can see that there's at least 2 friendlies guarding this point, so I would probably move on to Delta or some other location. Looking at the minimap, I mean, how many enemies are we looking at there? That's like 2 or 3 squads worth. Running into that, you're either going YOLO or Forrest Gump, and it looks like he's going to do exactly that. Immediately catches some good cover and catches the enemy just absolutely napping. Where are they? Where are you, enemy team? What are you looking at? My best guess is they're looking at Alpha, looking at those snipers, and trying to come up with some long-range kills. This is probably a good game right here. But in all seriousness, ViolentMotion is playing this very conservatively. He's scanning those roof lines, he's getting behind cover, he's looking for safe ways to approach this point, and now he's got a good part of his team coming up with him. So one mistake I find myself making later in the game is I start to get overconfident and I start playing things a little bit too quickly. I stop being smart about my plays, and ViolentMotion has remained pretty consistent with how he has been just playing it safe, making these good smart plays, sitting on health like this, waiting for his health to recharge. One of my biggest problems in the last couple of months has been waiting, trying to suppress that aggressive instinct. Far too often I'll see my whole team charging in like this, say to myself, I want to get some of those kills too, charge in with 20 health and just get one-rounded by somebody who just happens to get lucky. Take 5 seconds, recharge your health like that, get back in the action, and get those kills. Of course, if you're not Assault, you have to coerce one of them into giving you a health kit, which is almost as hard as getting a support to give you ammo. And with Echo out of the way, the Chinese team is just getting completely run over. At this point, the game is pretty much whack-a-mole. My choice here would probably be to push that far left, and let's see what ViolentMotion does. He runs into one of my least favorite things in the game. Peeks that. Probably not the best of ideas to try and peek that while there are bullets going. Teammate bullet shield and comes up with a kill there. Again, this far left has a lot of great cover that you can push from Echo to Delta on as any team on this map. And with that Mav on the minimap, you know that you're probably spotted, so you want to stick to the cover as much as possible. And if you have a decent set of enemies over here, they probably will come hunting for you. And we see at least 2 on the minimap right now. Sniper misses his shot, but ViolentMotion does not. Again, great use of tap fire and stopping while shooting. Very important with any weapon if you're trying to tap fire it. Now obviously, if enemies are looking downrange at you, you probably don't want to stand still and give them a clear shot. Another great tactic that he's doing here is he's always pushing forward, so he's not giving his enemy a clear picture of where he's at any one time. And even as a single soldier, he's delivering all this incredible pain to the enemy team by just making great use of this cover. And now since the teammates are filtering in, we can feel free to move up and find another piece of cover to sit behind. Now moving up with his team, he's moving in on one of the spawn areas for Delta. This back area of Delta has a ton of spawn points on it, so enemies that are defending Delta are almost always spawning back here, but you also have to watch out for where he just came from. There's a lot of spawn points back there too. And this is a great spot to deliver a lot of pain, but you absolutely have to pay attention to the minimap, otherwise enemies can come up just like that and kill you. So yeah, an absolutely great run by ViolentMotion there, but his teammates just did not have his back and couldn't hold that flank for him. If he had managed to have a little bit more effort out of his team, he probably would have come up with quite a few more kills there. And now he's going to have to hold off all of these enemies that are bearing down on him. There's 3 currently. The difference this time is we don't have any friendly support and manages to get killed by these enemies. He was totally outnumbered there, probably no way you could have gotten out of that. So there's something good to practice. What do you do when you're in a you're screwed situation? Well, really all you can do is hunker down and hope the enemy makes a mistake and buy yourself some time. If you have a defensive advantage like that, make the enemy come to you. You might get 1 or 2 more kills than you would have otherwise. Looks like we pushed the Chinese team back to Echo. This game's almost over. Like, it has been a blowout for the US team for the entire map. It's almost always been a constant 4 points on the US's side. I want to say that they've done a great job of always constantly jumping on wherever the Chinese team managed to crop up. And that's the thing, if you can keep the enemy team constantly on the defensive, they don't have time to push back. Even if it seems like they're really strong, they're definitely weak somewhere. Even right now on this level, the US team is weak at Alpha. And that's always a good thing to be thinking about in Conquest in general, is where's the enemy weak and where can you force them to redistribute their forces? By making their best squad go back to the start to recap a point, you might just change the entire momentum of the game. And here is a couple of great kills at the end, and that is game over. Overall, this was a fantastically solid round played by ViolentMotion. I think about the only critique I would have would be to consider switching up loadouts depending on where you are on the map or where you need to focus. There were a couple of times when a suppressor might have been really helpful. Also, definitely consider putting a stubby or angled grip on that AR-160. Interestingly enough, it looked like ViolentMotion was running the grenade field upgrade at the end, so it might have been better for him to try some other field upgrade, as I didn't see him really using a whole lot of grenades. But again, this was a very strong game by ViolentMotion, so well done. That's it for this episode of Over Your Shoulder. If you'd like to be featured in a future episode, be sure to message me your Battlelog information so I can add you to the list. If you liked this episode or you found it helpful or insightful, please leave a like before you go. If you're new around here, take a look at my channel and please consider subscribing. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time, YouTube.